The evening air was unusually still when Amaka stepped out of the taxi, balancing a tray covered with foil and wrapped in a warm cloth. She had cooked his favorite meal, offensala with soft fufu, hoping maybe, just maybe, a good dinner might soften the growing distance between them. It had been a hard week, another lonely one. Chukwuemeka had barely spoken to her, had barely come home. She had cried on Monday, prayed on Wednesday, and forced herself out of bed on Friday. But tonight she wanted peace, she wanted warmth. She wanted to remember the man she married. The front door was unlocked. She frowned. He's home early? A small smile lifted the corners of her lips. She hurried inside. The living room was quiet, lights dimmed. His shoes lay carelessly at the doorway, something he never did. She picked them up automatically, gently placing them on the shoe rack. "Amaka?" she called softly. No answer. She moved toward the bedroom she shared with him, their once warm sanctuary. She was already practicing what she would say when she opened the door. "I made your favorite. I missed you. Can we talk?" But before she reached the door, she heard it. A laugh, a woman's laugh, high, playful, unmistakable. Amaka froze. Her heart pounded violently against her chest. She felt her breath catch, her vision tilt slightly. Her fingers tightened around the tray she held. She stood there, her whole body trembling, hoping, praying that her mind was playing tricks. But the laugh came again, accompanied by a man's voice. His voice, her throat tightened. Her ears rang. For a moment she considered turning back, running, pretending she didn't hear anything. But something stronger, pain, fear, desperation, pulled her toward the door. Her hand shook uncontrollably as she reached for the doorknob. And with one push, her life fractured. The scene. The room smelled of expensive perfume, one she didn't own. The sheets she had washed that morning were tangled around two bodies, two naked bodies. Her husband lay on top of another woman, their movements slow, intimate, twisted together in a way that stabbed Amaka straight in the soul. For a moment she stood completely still, unable to move, unable to think. The tray slipped from her hands, crashing loudly to the floor. Soup splashed across the tiles. The sound jolted the lovers. The woman gasped and scrambled beneath the sheets, pulling them over her chest. Chukwuemeka turned, and instead of guilt, instead of shock, instead of remorse, his face hardened with annoyance. "What is it again, Amaka?" he snapped, as though she had interrupted a business meeting. Amaka's lips parted, but no words came out. Tears blurred her vision. Her hands shook violently. "Amaka," she whispered, her voice breaking. "In our bed? Our marriage bed?" The woman hugged the sheets, eyeing Amaka fearfully. Chukwuemeka, however, didn't look ashamed, didn't look concerned, didn't even sit up fully. His reply was cold enough to pierce bone. "If you don't like what you're seeing, leave." The words slammed into her chest with the force of a hammer. Leave. As if she were the intruder. As if she were the one doing something wrong. As if she had no right to feel pain. Her breath came out in shaky gasps. She stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the dressing table. Her entire body trembled as though she were standing in the middle of a storm. "Amaka, how could you, after everything—" He rolled his eyes. "Spare me your drama." Amaka staggered toward the hallway, gripping the wall for support. She could barely see through her tears. Each step felt like walking barefoot over glass. Behind her, she heard the woman's nervous whisper. "She looks so hurt. Maybe I should go." Chukwuemeka's response was brutal. "Don't mind her. She'll survive. She'll survive." Those words twisted deep inside her, ripping her heart open. In the living room, Amaka collapsed onto the floor near the couch, hands covering her face. The house felt different after that night. Hollow, tense, and suffocating. It was as if the walls themselves had absorbed the cruelty, the betrayal, and were now echoing it back into Amaka's chest every time she breathed. She didn't sleep that night. She sat on the living room rug, knees pulled tight to her chest, her tears soaking into her nightdress. The silence felt like a heavy blanket, pressing down on her, squeezing her heart until each breath hurt. She cried until her sobs weakened into soft, trembling gasps. Then she cried some more. By dawn, her eyes were swollen, her head pounding, her spirit bruised. She dragged herself to the bathroom to wash her face before her daughter woke up. She didn't want her little girl to see her broken. She pressed her palms against the sink, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman? This woman with red, swollen eyes and a face drained of all light. This woman whose lips trembled every time she tried to be strong. She didn't recognize herself. The morning after Chukwuemeka emerged from the bedroom in fresh clothes, humming softly as though nothing had happened. He didn't look at her, didn't speak, didn't show even a flicker of regret. The other woman was gone, of course, but her perfume lingered in the hallway, taunting Amaka with the memory. She stood at the kitchen sink, hands shaking as she washed a cup. She wanted to say something, anything, but the words lodged painfully in her throat. When he finally spoke, it was with cold indifference. "I'm not eating anything you make today," she flinched. "Amaka, can we talk about last night?" He stopped walking, turned slowly, and looked at her with eyes devoid of warmth. "There's nothing to talk about," her voice cracked. "But you hurt me." "And?" he snapped. His lips curled into a smirk. "You'll live." With that, he grabbed his keys and walked out. The door slammed so loudly that the plates in the cupboard rattled. Amaka leaned against the counter, sliding to the floor as another wave of tears crashed through her. A montage of pain. The days that followed blurred together into a painful routine, a montage of silent suffering. Night 1. She woke up alone, the other side of the bed untouched. She rolled into the cold space and sobbed quietly into the pillow. Night 2. He came home past midnight, smelling of alcohol and women's perfume. She pretended to be asleep, but tears slipped down her face as she listened to him rummage through drawers. Night 3. He didn't come home at all. Amaka sat in the living room, the clock ticking endlessly, each minute louder than the last. She prayed, begged God to change her husband's heart. She fell asleep on the couch with her Bible clutched to her chest. Night 5. He brought another woman home. Amaka locked herself in the bathroom, covering her ears, whispering prayers to drown out the sounds. Each night carved a deeper wound in her heart. The child who knew too much. Their daughter, little Kamsi, was too young to understand everything, but she knew enough. She saw her mother's tears, saw her father's absence, and one morning, she tugged gently at Amaka's wrapper. "Mummy, why are you sad?" The question broke her. She knelt, pulling Kamsi into a tight embrace. "Mummy is fine, my love." But she wasn't. Kamsi reached up and wiped her tears with tiny fingers. "Don't cry, Mummy, I will make you happy." Amaka broke into soft, painful sobs. Her child, her innocent, sweet child, was trying to fix wounds she couldn't even describe. Communication dies. With each passing day, Chukwuemeka drifted further away. Their interactions became nothing more than sharp exchanges. "Amaka, can we talk?" "Leave me alone." "Can you help me with—" "I'm busy." "Can we pray to get—" "Stop disturbing me." Eventually, she stopped trying. She stopped asking questions. Stopped expecting an apology. Stopped hoping for change. Silence became their new language, a painful, suffocating quiet that hung in every room. Intimacy dies completely. One night, after another argument that ended with him slamming the bedroom door in her face, Amaka stood outside their bedroom and whispered, "Do you still love me?" There was no answer, just the sound of him turning off his bedside lamp. She stood there for a long time, her shadow stretching across the floor, until she finally walked away. Her bed became a cold island. His became a boundary she no longer dared to cross. Her secret nights alone in the dark, she cried silently because she didn't want neighbors to hear her pain. She pressed a pillow against her mouth to muffle the sobs. Her body shook with grief. Her hands trembled each time she remembered the betrayal. Some nights she prayed so hard her voice cracked. Other nights, she lay motionless, staring at the ceiling. One morning, Amaka looked at her reflection, not with pity, but with dawning recognition. The ghost had to go. Her heart was broken, but her spirit was not. The first step was the hardest. She stopped praying for him to change and started praying for her own strength. She started small. She changed her clothes, no longer wearing the faded gray. She began studying online, a forgotten dream rekindled. She found work. Every small victory was a brick laid on the foundation of her new self. The house was still tense, but now she was the eye of the storm, calm and resolute. Chukwuemeka noticed the change, but his scorn had no power over her. The silence still hung heavy, but for Amaka it had become a shield, a space for growth. The day came when she looked at her wedding ring, and it no longer felt like a chain, but an anchor she was ready to pull up. She packed a single bag, kissed her sleeping daughter, and left the silent house, not running in fear, but walking into the rising sun. Her life was fractured, yes, but now she held the pieces, ready to build something new, something unbreakable.
The change didn't come suddenly. It crept in quietly, like the slow gathering of clouds before a storm. First a missed payment, then a forgotten promise. Then another, until the tiny cracks widened into chasms of coldness and control. And soon, Chukwuemeka stopped giving Amaka money. Not because he lacked it. Not because times were hard. But because withholding became another weapon. A silent punishment he knew would hurt her most. The first time it happened on a Saturday morning. Chukwuemeka lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone with lazy arrogance. Amaka stood at a careful distance, palms sweaty, throat dry. "Amaka, we need money for groceries. There isn't much left in the house." He didn't even look up. Just muttered, "I don't have." She frowned gently. "But you were paid yesterday." He clicked his tongue sharply, a sound that made her flinch. "Are you deaf? I said I don't have." Cold, sharp. Final. But Amaka had seen the new shoes he bought the night before. She heard him laughing on the phone, planning drinks with his friends. She knew he was lying. Still, she swallowed every word rising up her throat. Experience had taught her that correcting him only triggered storms she had no strength left to weather. The hunger that followed days passed, the food kept shrinking. 1 cup of rice stretched to 2 meals. Gary soaked thinner than ever. Beans cooked and recooked until she barely tasted them. Every day she pretended she was full, pushing food toward her daughter, hiding her own hunger behind a trembling smile. But little Kamsi was sharper than she looked. One evening, as Amaka slid her empty plate aside, her daughter stared at her with innocent curiosity. "Mummy, why aren't you eating?" Amaka forced a smile she didn't feel. "I already ate earlier, my baby." But her stomach growled loudly, betraying her. Kamsi frowned. "Your tummy is making noise." The smile on Amaka's face cracked. She quickly grabbed a storybook and changed the subject, praying her daughter would forget. That night, after Kamsi fell asleep, Amaka stood alone in the hallway, hand pressed to her aching belly, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. How had she journeyed from a hopeful newlywed to a woman starving in her own kitchen? The empty lunchbox, everything reached a breaking point one morning. Amaka opened the food cupboard and felt the air leave her lungs. Just half a cup of rice, a handful of beans, a few spices. Nothing more. She packed Kamsi's lunchbox carefully, shame and heartbreak pressing against her ribcage. 2 tiny slices of yam, a thin drizzle of tomato stew. When Kamsi opened it, her face fell. "Mummy, is that all?" Amaka knelt, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry, my love. I promise I'll pack more tomorrow." But even she didn't believe her promise. Later that afternoon, the neighbor who watched Kamsi leaned in close. "Amaka, your daughter didn't eat her lunch?" "She said she was saving it for you." Amaka's world tilted. That night, when she opened the little pink lunchbox and saw the untouched yam slices, her knees gave way.
Desperation. Amaka tried again. She waited until Chukwuemeka stumbled in late, reeking of alcohol, sweat, and another woman's perfume. Her voice shook. "Amaka, please. We need to buy food. Not for me, for your daughter. She has nothing to take to school tomorrow." He didn't look at her, didn't blink, didn't care. "Manage what you have." Amaka clenched her hands. "We don't have anything left." His head snapped toward her, his glare sharp enough to cut. "Are you stupid? I said I don't have money." "But your account," she began softly. He shot up from the chair, towering over her. "If you ever ask me about my money again, you'll regret it." She stepped back instinctively. Her voice shrank. "I only want to feed your daughter." He scoffed bitterly. "She's your daughter. You carried her. Go and take care of her." The word slapped her harder than any physical blow. She stood frozen, small, shaking, alone. He brushed past her, leaving her trembling in the dim hallway, a shadow in a home that was supposed to be hers. Borrowed bread eventually, she began to borrow. 1,000 naira from a neighbor, 200 from a church member, a small bag of rice from a woman at the market. She lied when they asked questions. Just a small delay. Everything is fine. But she wasn't fine. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. Her eyes dimmed. Her laughter died. Her spirit faded. She, the wife, had become a beggar, not outside. Inside her own home. A house full of silence. Chukwuemeka stopped speaking to her entirely. No greetings. No answers. No eye contact. Some evenings he would pass her in the hallway and look through her as if she didn't exist. He no longer spoke to their daughter either. He lived in the same house, but he had abandoned them completely. He laughed loudly on secret phone calls. He returned home smelling of life lived elsewhere. He spent money on strangers, never on his own family. Amaka existed like a ghost, moving quietly through rooms, hoping not to trigger his rage. Loneliness wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. Every morning, she woke with the same ache. She was alone in every way that mattered, the breaking point. He walked into the bedroom and slammed the door so hard that a framed photo fell off the wall. The photo of their wedding day. The frame cracked just like her heart. A mother's pain. Later that night, Amaka sat on the edge of her daughter's bed, watching her sleep peacefully. Kamsi's tiny hands were curled near her chest, her lips slightly parted, her breathing soft and steady. Amaka stroked her daughter's hair, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, my baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. You deserve a father who loves you." Her voice broke. "You deserve a home full of peace. Not this." Kamsi shifted slightly, her small fingers brushing against her mother's knee, as though sensing the pain in her heart. Amaka pulled the blanket over her gently and tried unsuccessfully to swallow her sobs. A new kind of firth. Following days were worse. Chukwuemeka flaunted the pregnancy proudly, brought the mistress to the house again, bought her gifts, spent money freely. While Amaka had nothing, she overheard him one evening on the phone, laughing loudly. "My son is coming. I've been waiting for this." His voice glowed in a way it had never glowed for her, for their daughter. Amaka pressed her back against the wall, slid down slowly, and covered her ears as if that would shield her from the truth. It didn't. The truth was a dagger buried deep. And each day it twisted further. The breaking. She didn't shout. She didn't fight. She didn't beg. She simply crumbled quietly day by day. Something in her spirit began to die, the last fragments of hope slipping away like sand between her fingers. She realized then that this wasn't just betrayal. It was cruelty, humiliation, abandonment, punishment. And as she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling with tears drying on her cheeks, she whispered to herself, "I cannot stay here forever." For the first time, she thought of leaving, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of survival. Amaka closed her eyes and prayed a prayer she had never dared to pray before. "God, show me the door. Show me the courage to walk through it." And in the silence of that night, she felt something heavy lift from her chest. A small breath of freedom, a tiny spark of courage, a whisper of escape. Little did she know, the next chapter of her life would begin with that whisper. Amaka woke before dawn, long before the birds began to chirp or the first rays of light touched the curtains. She lay motionless on the mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, her chest rising and falling in slow, shallow breaths. Sleep had become a stranger, peace, an abandoned home, hope, a faint memory. For months, she had lived in a house filled with noise, arguments, laughter that wasn't hers, phone calls meant to humiliate her, the footsteps of strangers in her matrimonial bedroom. But now, the one thing surrounding her was silence, a dangerous silence, the silence of a dying spirit. The phone call that shattered her soul further around 6:15 a.m. She heard the ringtone from the bedroom she no longer shared. She didn't intend to listen, but his voice traveled like thunder through thin walls. "Yes, baby, yes. I heard you. Don't worry. I'll come over this morning. I miss you too." He chuckled softly in a way he had never done with her in years. You want suya? Anything for my queen?" Amaka sat up slowly, heart cracking again like dry earth beneath heavy footsteps. "Queen." The word stabbed her. She had once been his queen. Now she was barely a shadow in her own home. The day he didn't come home at all, the day before her breaking point, Chukwuemeka didn't return home, not even at midnight. Not even at dawn. It had become normal. But something felt different this time. She checked the door twice, walked to the window, peered outside, listened for his footsteps. Nothing. When Kamsi asked innocently, "Mummy, where is Daddy?" Amaka forced a smile that felt like someone tightening a rope around her neck. "Daddy went out. He will come later." But he didn't. He didn't call. He didn't message. He didn't explain. And she didn't ask anymore. The silence between them had grown into a wall she no longer tried to climb. The bruise she could not explain that evening. While bathing Kamsi, Amaka felt a sudden, sharp pain in her chest. She looked down and saw a faint purple bruise, one she did not remember getting. She traced the mark with trembling fingers. Stress, grief, emotional exhaustion. Her body was collapsing under the weight of her suffering. And for the first time, she whispered to herself, "I am dying in this marriage." Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. She was fading. The argument that pushed her over the edge finally returned late the next night. The door banged loudly, startling Kamsi awake. He stormed into the living room, tossing his jacket onto the floor. Amaka stood from the sofa, keeping her voice calm. "Amaka, where have you been? You didn't answer my calls." He shot her a cold glare. "Is that your problem? Must you disturb my peace?" Her heart tightened. "I was worried. You left yesterday morning and so..." The words slammed into her. He walked past her, opening the fridge, grabbing a bottle of beer. "You're always complaining," he muttered. "Always talking nonsense." Her lips trembled. "I'm not complaining. He turned sharply. His voice thundered through the house. "Just leave me alone. You're suffocating me." Kamsi, frightened, ran into the hallway crying. Amaka instinctively moved toward her daughter, but Chukwuemeka raised a hand not to hit her, but to silence her. Even that gesture was enough to make her flinch. "Don't follow me," he growled before slamming the bedroom door. The sound echoed through her bones. That was the moment something inside her snapped, not loudly, not violently, quietly, like a rope finally breaking after being stretched for too long. A night of realization. She sat in the living room long after he slept, staring at the wall, her mind empty and full at the same time. She thought of the early days, university laughter, shared dreams, promises made under the stars. How did it turn into this? She remembered the first time he held her hand. The first "I love you." The day he vowed before God to cherish her. Lies, all of them. She pressed her palm to her chest. The word froze her. Mama clapped happily. "Yes, oh. When her son is born, everything will be different." Different. The word stabbed deeper. Amaka realized then that she was already being replaced. Erased. Removed from her own life. The breaking point. After they left, Amaka walked into her bedroom, the room that had stopped being hers long ago, and stood there in the quiet. She looked at the mirror, at her sunken eyes, her thinning frame, her trembling hands. Then she said aloud, voice breaking, "I can't do this anymore." She fell to her knees. Sobs tore out of her chest, loud, raw, uncontrollable. For the first time, she didn't hold back. She cried for her lost dreams, her stolen love, her shattered marriage, her starving soul. She cried until she had no tears left. And when she finally stood up, weak but clear-headed, she whispered, "I will leave. I must leave. For me. For my daughter." Her breaking point was not rage. It was clarity. A painful, piercing clarity that told her she deserved more than pain. She deserved life. She deserved peace. She deserved the chance to breathe again. And the only way to breathe was to walk away before she died inside completely. The escape-expanded night had fallen heavily, wrapping the house in a thick darkness that seemed to swallow all the air. The wind outside hissed through the window cracks, and the trees rustled like whispers of warning. Amaka stood in the hallway, clutching the doorway of her bedroom, staring at the men snoring loudly on the bed, a bed that hadn't felt like hers for a long time. Chukwuemeka had come home drunk, collapsing on the sheets without a word, without a glance in her direction. The smell of tobacco and another woman's perfume drifted from his clothes. He didn't know she was watching him. He didn't know she was leaving. He didn't know this was the last night he would ever see her. Amaka's hands trembled not from fear, but from finality. Her heart raced not from panic, but from the courage she never believed she could gather. Tonight, she would save herself. Tonight, she would save her daughter. Hours earlier, the decision she had stood in the living room earlier that evening, holding her daughter's homework book. Her eyes traced a small, crooked handwriting. My mummy is my hero. Hero. The word clenched her chest. She thought of how Kamsi flinched when her father shouted, how she hid under the table when they argued, how she asked every night, Mummy, are you happy? And Amaka always lied, but to continue lying would destroy them both. After putting Kamsi to sleep, she sat at the foot of the bed and whispered into the darkness, God, give me strength. For the first time, she felt an answer, not words, but a calmness. Not a voice, but a push. She stood, knowing exactly what she needed to do. Packing the bag, she waited until the entire house was silent. Until the street outside was empty. Until the moon hid behind the clouds. Until the world felt still. Then she took out the small black Ghana must-go bag she had bought months ago just in case. She had hidden it behind old buckets so he would never see it. With slow, deliberate movements, she began to pack. 2 wrappers, 3 blouses, one of her old church gowns, her daughter's school uniform, the small sweater that smelled like baby powder, a tiny pair of pink shoes, a toothbrush wrapped in tissue, a bar of soap, a well-folded birth certificate, Kamsi's immunization card, a little photo of them both smiling, one of the last genuine smiles they had shared. I believe everything else could be replaced. But these items, these were their survival. Her hands shook as she zipped the bag, but her resolve held firm. Waking her daughter, she entered the small bedroom where Kamsi slept, curled up peacefully with her thumb lightly touching her chin. Amaka knelt beside her, brushing a stray curl off her forehead. Kamsi, she whispered softly, my baby, wake up gently. The little girl blinked slowly, confused. Mummy, is it morning? Amaka's heart tightened painfully. No, my love. We're going somewhere, just you and me. Kamsi sat up, sleepy but obedient. Where? Amaka swallowed hard. Somewhere safe. She helped her into the little sweater, then lifted her into her arms. Kamsi rested her head on her mother's shoulder, trusting her completely. No movement from the bedroom. She slowly pulled the door open and stepped outside, clutching her daughter close as she slipped into the cool night. The air smelled of dust and freedom. She closed the door quietly behind her, and in that moment, with her heart pounding and her child in her arms, she left her marriage behind. The road to Safety Street was quiet, just streetlights flickering like tired angels watching over her. She walked quickly but carefully, her slippers slapping softly on the pavement. Kamsi dozed against her shoulder, and Amaka whispered prayers with each step. God, protect us. God, strengthen me. God, show us the way. She didn't have money for a taxi. Chukwuemeka had taken control of everything, so she walked through dark streets, past quiet houses, past barking dogs, past the memories of pain. She walked until she reached a junction where her childhood friend, Adaora, lived. And when she knocked softly on the gate, Adaora opened it in shock. Her eyes widened as she took in Amaka's tear-stained face and the sleeping child in her arms. Amaka, what happened? Amaka's voice broke. Please, let me stay just for tonight. Adaora didn't ask further questions. She simply opened the gate wider and pulled her friend into a tight, protective embrace. Her first sleep in freedom inside the warm, quiet guest room, Amaka placed her daughter gently on the bed. She knelt beside it, brushing tears off her cheeks. She hadn't cried from sadness this time, but from relief. For the first time in years, she felt a small flicker of safety, a small breeze of hope, a small whisper of peace. She lay beside Kamsi and wrapped her arms around her daughter protectively. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was, we made it out. And the darkness that once suffocated her now felt like rest. A new dawn next morning. Sunlight touched her face gently. Not harsh, not judgmental, just soft warmth on her skin. She opened her eyes slowly, For the first time in a long time, she woke up without fear, without shouting, without insults, without heartbreak. Beside her, Kemsey stirred and smiled sleepily. "Good morning, Mummy." Amaka kissed her forehead. "Good morning, my angel." A tear of gratitude slid down her cheek. She had walked away from a home that had become a prison. She had walked into the unknown. She had walked into freedom. And even though she didn't know what the future held, for the first time in years she believed it could be beautiful.